Hello and welcome to the first official TMF Podcast. Yes, you heard that right. Our previous episode is no longer available, and we will deny its existence from this point forward. But in all seriousness, we are so happy to welcome everyone back. The host, who will be lighting a fire under your ass this week, will be JOSUE, an aspiring Marine Corps officer who is currently finishing up ROTC and his bachelor's degree in the criminal justice program. And myself, Justin, an aspiring motivational leader and life coach. Currently finishing up a couple more years of life experience, so people will naturally take me more seriously. We are both highly motivated individuals who love to challenge the modern rhetoric and want to reach out and share our findings with all of our wonderful listeners.
Today's segment will include community involvement, where we go over some of the feedback requested from the non-existent first episode.
But this is our first episode, right?
Yes, it is. We will also be taking our weekly drive on toxic masculinity. We found that this subject is quite extensive, and we will be turning it into a 3-part series to be able to accurately cover some of the concepts related. So please bear with us over the next couple of weeks, as some of the information that might seem to come up short will most likely be covered in the following episode. Finally, we'll be wrapping up with another urgent news report, which will feature IRL. This segment received a lot of positive feedback, and we're more than excited to give it another go-around. So let's get this fire lit
and get motivated.
Alright, man. First, we're going to start this episode off by giving a little bit of a community involvement segment. We really want to thank everyone who listened to the first episode from the bottom of our hearts. And an extra special shout out goes to those of you who have already subscribed to our YouTube channel, and to those who have followed us on social media.
And if you haven't already, you can find us on Facebook under The Motivating Force, and Instagram under @PodcastTMF. And nice and simple, Podcast TMF. Nothing fancy to it. We'll be posting weekly on what to expect for the upcoming episode, and also posting once we release the episode. As a bonus to that, IRL catches some great behind-the-scenes clips from time to time, so be sure to check those out also.
We greatly appreciate all the feedback that we received from those of you who checked it out, and we are working on improving the overall quality of our shows for you. We do want to mention that if there's any questions you want answered on from this episode, or a point that you want us to cover, please make sure to comment, and we can make a segment dedicated to answering these inquiries. There are a few key notes that we received from a lot of you, and we wanted to briefly discuss them. First, thank you all for stomaching the honestly terrible audio quality from the previous non-existent episode. We immediately acquired better recording equipment so we can come across clearer.
I mean, come on. The proof is in the pudding with that one. If the audio quality still doesn't meet your requirements, we will shoot the editor and hire a new one. No worries. Anything for the listeners.
And by the way, he is the editor.
Get me out of here!
Second, we are working on putting fewer segments in our episodes. This way we can focus on improving the quality of the main topic each week. With that being said, I feel we should clarify on the segment layout. The weekly drive will cover the focal point, making it the biggest portion of the episode. This is the main goal of why we are podcasting.
Exactly. We just like challenging ourselves in various ways, which is where we came up with the multiple segment idea. Which leads me to the next point. We received some feedback regarding the bad move segment in the last episode. It was an idea that we had where we would just practice playing devil's advocate with different topics. We get that the topics that we argued were a bit random, and we did not discuss the positive effects to each topic, as this was not the intent. We are currently working on reshaping that segment to make it more understood to everyone. We just ask that you understand that we aren't professionals just yet. All of our segments are still in development, and they will all evolve and get better with time and with your feedback.
Overall, the feedback has been amazing. We only sought after the negative feedback because we wanted to focus strictly on improving. Most of you couldn't hold back from the positive comments, and we thank you so much for that as well. We're glad our message is getting across to everyone, and will only do so more effectively as we hone in our skills. We seriously cannot thank you enough.
I feel that about sums it up. Let's jump right into the weekly drive.
Alright everyone, like we mentioned earlier, this is the first part of a 3-part series, in which we will be covering the controversial side of toxic masculinity. This week we're going to cover the suppression of emotions in young men and how they cater to society. We will also be giving some personal experiences where we have dealt with the issue on all sides of the spectrum. To start, let's make sure we are all on the same page on what toxic masculinity is. It is described as a traditional stereotypes of men that can cause harm to society and to the men themselves. Just to be clear, the term toxic masculinity does not mean to devalue masculine traits. I just want to state that men should be able to embrace the physiological differences between themselves and females. The society we live in has currently been ramping up the concealment of masculine expression. Whether it be emotional, physical, or verbal, the suppression was moderate in its early stages, but has quickly grown by an exponential amount. But for now, let's just focus on the emotional aspect of the issue in this week's episode.
Yeah, so when we talk about the concealment of masculine expression, we want to get specific in talking about our emotional side. This is where the biggest problem in men is happening today. The late 90s, early 2000s even, was a more accepting approach to men's natural tendencies. We could be more expressive. We were able to vibe together, grow together. We were more tolerant to mistakes. Because there is such a thing as going too far, and this happens regardless of gender, but talking about toxic masculinity here, the types of mistakes I'm implying lead to the proving point of this argument. We started off small, with little accusations here and there, and now we're at a point of full-on cancel culture, as it's referred to. One single thing done out of line can lead to a lawsuit, jail time, the loss of a job, just all kinds of negative effects. It's an overexertion of judgment and consequence to some actions. Hell, a man can't even approach a female at this point without a 40-page disclosure about his intentions with her. We have to be so careful with our own feelings. We don't even seek the help and understanding of other men anymore. And most of the time when you do, I can promise you this, you'll get a scared response. Things such as bullying or separation from you. It almost seems like being associated to someone going through a hard time is just going to get you in trouble as well. We seem to have no way out. We were working on getting there together, but now as men, we must individually figure it out on our own. So it should come to no surprise that this form of isolation actually makes depression and suicide the number 4 leading healthcare problem that men see here in the United States. And that's a rate of 6 million men a year suffering from these depressive disorders. And I use that term because we've actually gotten this information directly from healthline.com, also from the National Institute of Mental Health. So you can see the show notes there if you want to dive a little bit deeper into those statistics. You can see that we're getting further away from the type of growth that men are seeking. Otherwise, we wouldn't be killing ourselves. We wouldn't be feeling like what we're doing is wrong. This should be pretty self-evident, but I guess not.
If men felt that we could confide in our friends in order to vent out our frustrations, it could be beneficial to our health overall. Throughout the research we did on this topic, we found a study performed in 2004, which boys from the age 7 to 12 would not share negative emotions with their peers because they felt as if they would receive rejection to those emotions. I mean, an example of those rejections that I'm sure many of us have experienced with as children is when, let's say, we would get hurt in school or sports and like you're bleeding or something and you want to cry. I've had friends that would say things like, don't be gay or don't be a puss. So these kids in the study would only express these emotions to their parents or when they were alone. Fast forward 20 years, we see single parent households being the norm. These kids today face a real challenge. If you don't have the proper coping skills, being angry when you're by yourself can be problematic. Hell, I've punched a couple walls when I was alone and angry. But when was the last time you taught a 7-year-old to cope with anger? It's not too soon to do so. Unfortunately, we only teach coping skills when it's too late. They already realize this type of rejection, so when you ask the kid if they're okay, you get the suppressed adult-like response, yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah, I can relate to that. If you want a quick tip, I've learned that I can't tell people when I'm angry. To go up and tell somebody, like, I'm angry, right? If I went up to Irel, or if I went up to you and just said, I'm angry, it's not going to do me any good. It's going to just ultimately make me feel worse. So I kind of picked my own words for that, which people in my inner circle know. If I'm ever doing just peachy, man, do people come running to help me. They know what's going on in my life at that point.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because I've related that word peachy to you. So since you've been saying this for so long, I've always, like, if I hear peachy, I think, oh, somebody's mad.
Yeah, it's kind of my trademark word for angry now.
Exactly. This is something that I struggle with, and I believe I get it from my father. I don't tend to express my feelings with anyone until it's too late, and I tend to rage out. As I get older, the more I realize this is a problem. I'm working on fixing this within myself, and I've learned to communicate more in order to vent these frustrations out. Whether it be with you, bro, or my beautiful woman at home, the act of venting out has helped me not only with my relationship and home life, but with my perspective on life itself. Mind you, going to the gym has been another giant form of stress relief, but we'll get into that in just a couple minutes. Just finding that outlet that pulls you out of your own head as a man is so important during these times. Especially now during the COVID pandemic, where I'm sure lots of men are suffering in silence due to the loss of a job, a sick family member, or property damage. I advise that you find the confidence to either confide in a peer or a significant other and take that load off your shoulders. This podcast, for example, is basically us putting our growth on display. This is pretty much therapy for us because we want to show you guys our flaws and where we struggle because we are also human. But through the podcast and the research we do here, we can learn how to grow and better implement them into our lives so we don't keep making the same mistakes. And this way we can also hold each other accountable. But it's because the two of us can confide in one another and just rant for hours on random topics that we figured why not start this, where we can help each other and help our listeners who might be going through the same things we are.
Right off the top here, there are some points that I want to pull out from what you just said, because they really do resonate with me so well. First being that you mentioned me, right? Man, I'm just tickled by that right now. But on the serious side of that, I'll run back to that. Because the second point that really sticks out here is this trend that I see where you talk about being alone and the silence that comes with that, being able to confide in others. I can't begin to tell you the power of the human voice. Man, we could do a full segment on the effects of the human voice alone. Here are some easy points with it. The first being, once you vocalize your thoughts, you can see how ridiculous some of your thoughts actually sound in real life. That alone can be a wake-up call to just be able to speak them aloud, even when you're by yourself. Having that person to actually listen is so important. I'm not here to knock women or to put anything less of them, but we are talking about toxic masculinity here. You must have a male friend to confide in. I say this because the easiest example I could give would be how parents and teenagers can't really relate to each other. The teenagers always, that's always the easiest thing. You remember growing up, you'd always say that about your parents, oh, what do they know? They're in their 40s, right? They've already had their life made.
Yeah.
They don't understand what I'm going through, but we don't realize that they were teenagers, just like us. Yeah. They've gone through the same things we've gone through. But the point being is that you need to find somebody that you can just go into this deep vent with and really make some progress. But those little excuses that you can give, they can sneak into your head so easily. The second that, your parents tell you something that just didn't seem right to you, it's so easy to put it off because there's always that age gap there. There's always that excuse that you can give. So you'll be more likely to shrug that off and just, well, that's easy for you to say. That's from a different time era or whatever stereotype you want to insert there. With a like-minded male, preferably around your age as well, you will have a harder time finding an excuse than you will by just actually accepting their advice and guidance. I'm not going to say you're screwed if you lack this key person in your life. You should consider finding one if you are struggling. Not only can this guy give you advice or relate the closest to you, but he can kick your ass if he has to. And sometimes we really need that. Of course, I don't mean an actual ass kicking here, but just getting out of the house. Since we're talking about socially acceptable forms of expression here, we're going to lean more towards exercise, physical activities, such as the gym.
Hell, it could even be one of those like MMA, jiu-jitsu, or even like taekwondo dojos for all we care. The point we're trying to make, like just looking for that physical release of testosterone that your body needs, because your masculinity is not the problem. That's just basic testosterone, your human nature. Your reaction to the strong emotions that come from within can be the problem, though. We're talking about how to cope with that. For example, dieting or exercise, letting that physical release out so it's not just pent up.
We will be going deeper into exercise, as this actually has the most impact. Dieting is a key part to your being as well. There are many things to make yourself aware of as you have this internal reflection on your emotions. Spend some of that energy reflecting on what your body is telling you, especially about the foods that you are eating. In these modern times, we look for mostly whole foods, as we've come to find out that this processed foods that we're consuming are bad for you.
And it's about time that we got around to that.
Yeah, but we're replacing some of these bad foods with non-nutritious alternatives. If something has zero nutritional value, you may not be adding excessive amounts of carbs or calories to your diet, but what are you really filling yourself up with?
All right, so real quick, you mentioned non-nutritious foods. What the heck is that?
A perfect example would be, let's say, diet soda. You think you can just drink them all day because it isn't affecting your caloric goals, but the reality of it is you're still loading yourself down with preservatives, carbonation, and aspartame. This is something that actually applies to both males and females. When you're taking in all this artificial garbage, it'll have adverse effects on your physiological being. In short, your hormone levels can get jacked up from it. So don't think you're going to do better for yourself because on the surface your nutrition looks to be on par. Make sure you actually see what ingredients you're filling yourself up with.
So you're basically just getting the lesser of two evils with this, except you're focusing on moderation throughout whatever diet you're working on. And when I say diet, by the way, I don't mean keto or the South Beach diet. I'm referring to like whatever it is you are eating.
Right. Yeah, that is a good point to make. Because just to clarify on that, everybody is on a diet. It's just a simple way of saying everything I ate this week. Real quick, since we are talking about this artificial garbage and the way it affects your physiological being, there is a personal pet peeve that I have with men who consume soy. For the love of God, stop consuming soy products. Your body might be able to process proteins from soy more efficiently than some of these other sources out there, but the consequences of that, man, you are pumping your body full of estrogen. That's what certain parts of soy converts into in your body. So if you really want to talk about having an hormonal balance, you'd be effortlessly creating one by consuming too much soy.
Yeah, and if you're like me, folks, and when you hear the word soy, you think of soy milk immediately, there are other options for this, which I personally prefer, such as like oat milk or almond milk. The plain kind, by the way, because the vanilla or different flavored ones have so much sugar per serving that you're better off just drinking soda. But in reality, what Justin is talking about is soy in general. So things like canned foods, things like ramen.
Tofu? Textured soy protein is really the big one. Textured soy protein is vegan meat. Generally, things with a high salinity level as well. But I digress from this. We'll be covering nutrition in another episode. For now, let's just get back on track with proper forms of this emotional release.
So when we talk about emotional release, this could be a number of things. In my experience, I've been on the receiving end of the excess use of force, or, well, let me word this better, the incorrect way of releasing your emotions as a man. Personally, when I was a kid, my father struggled with anger. In some cases, it was mild, and others it tended to be extreme. I'm not saying I was abused or anything to this degree, but it's what I would say most of my Latino listeners can relate to. I believe the anger stemmed from his upbringing. Like, his father was a boxer who used to drink a lot, so fighting was something he was used to, and it was considered to be like the manliest thing to do in that era. Of course, the fighting and violence is magnified once you add alcohol. And everybody knows that as a kid, you tend to have role models, which usually end up being like a parent or older sibling. Therefore, my dad looked up to my grandfather out of respect, yet partially out of fear because of what would happen after like the violence and alcohol mix, And this being the case, he was either being or told to fight instead of crying or showing his emotions out in public. So in other words, being suppressed from that, like from showing his feelings and using his drastic outlet. As he grew older, he ended up retaining this mentality throughout the process of starting a family. Things like lashing out whenever he was upset about something or yelling at me or my mother. These were like pretty common events in my childhood. This form of expression ended up being a major role in the divorce and separation of my parents when I think I was like 7 years old. And on seeing this, I told myself that I don't want to grow up being this angry and scary person that my dad currently was.
Real quick on that, there is an underlying point here that I do want to bring out. What I'm kind of picking up on, as far as the story goes so far, is that your dad saw this angry and scary person.
Right.
So he didn't want to be that way. And he worked on fixing it. He acknowledged there was an issue there. And yet, a whole new generation later, you see an angry and scary person that you didn't want to be like either.
Yeah.
We can't deny the progress that your dad made, but sometimes these damaging traits take so long to heal, one lifetime isn't enough to correct it towards the next. This is why acknowledging and fixing toxic masculinity is so important.
Yeah, exactly. So, like when I mentioned earlier, when I said that I have trouble expressing my feelings until it's too late, I did end up carrying some of those negative qualities that my dad had. But since there's more focus on this toxic masculinity subject in my generation, or our generation, I should say, Justin, I was able to recognize my negative traits a lot earlier.
And this is the type of progress I'm talking about. It's a shame that the tolerance to this type of growth is declining again. But that's why we need to bring this back to the forefront.
Right. So back to the story. A few years following the divorce, my father remarried and brought my little brother into this world. Mind you, he still struggled with this issue he had of excessive aggression. After yet another divorce, he looked within himself and found that he shouldn't resort to violence just because he was comfortable with it being the go-to outlet for his emotional instability. He realized that he had set a horrible example for his boys and worked on extinguishing that fire that would let his rage run rampant. He has since become a lot better at finding his outlets to moderate his emotions, and he continues to talk to my brother and I about other ways to express ourselves without having to think that violence is always the answer to our problems.
Okay, so I can see why the change can be hard to make. Leaving your comfort zone can be impossible sometimes, even if it's not the right place to be to begin with. Do you think your father, made enough changes in time from you to your little brother to give the young one a different perception of him?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was 10 when my little brother was born. And my father realized the effect his anger coping skills had on me by then. So I would say my little brother doesn't have those scary memories of him being so violent.
That's great, man. So he doesn't have that big, scary, and angry figure that you still saw. It really goes to show how far that the tolerance needs to go for the changes to be made in men who suffer from this type of toxicity. We all know it's not right. He knew it wasn't right. and he tried his best to be better, and not every attempt was successful. His punishment came from his own actions. We don't need to punish anyone on this. Just help them grow, be tolerant towards it. Positivity attracts positivity. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We can see here, through your grandfather and your father's life, the need for moderation was there to help bring down the anger, and to also be careful and not let it build up. It can lead to those outbursts that you talked about, but the key to moderation is really a two-way street, and this is where I can share a little bit personally on the other end of that street. I didn't grow up playing sports or doing really anything that involved physical activity. To more clearly paint that picture for everyone here, I did a mix of drama camp during the summers and drama as an elective for 6 years. Literally all of middle and high school, I was involved in theatrics. Just to show you where this is going, I freaking love writing poetry, man. I mean, I have over 100 poems I've written. Writing was always my strong point. Just between figuring out the right words to use and being thoughtful, the creativity that came from it, those were really the key features that I was trying to grow, which really is a great thing. I mean, you can cultivate those qualities into a fairly successful life.
Yeah, and I still remember coming over to your house and seeing you pull up like a poem or a story that you wrote that day. This was what, like middle school for us?
Right.
Or yeah, like transitioning into high school. This is where it shows like that we were able to confide, or that you were able to confide in me to show me that and know that I wouldn't tease or bully you like some other people would. Because a few years ago, I found that my dad would do the same thing and write poems in his phone, but not share them with anyone. I mean, like, this was top secret information.
Right.
Yeah, like, I only found out because I used to get like the hand-me-downs from him every time he would upgrade to the newest phone. And like if I needed to write something in notes, for some reason his old stuff would still be in the notes section. So I would like read some of them, and I was really able to grasp the weight of the emotional conflict that he was dealing with my entire childhood. But back to you, bro. You know, you're still one of the best writers I know.
And it's crazy how the same approach has two different outcomes, right? With that key difference, you need to confide in a bro. Now, how do you think my other peers felt about those qualities that I had? You know, as you can imagine, my middle and high school years were filled with bullying as well. I was subject to it for a long time. Thankfully, I had just one friend who would just destroy anyone who messed with me. Much love and respect to him for taking care of me in that regard. He was always a big brother image, even though he was only 6 months older than me. But now you might be wondering, how does all that apply to the term moderation? And here's how I see it. I spent all of my time being creative and using my brain for these thoughts and emotions. Every aspect of my life was creative in that sense. I never actually did anything. I didn't even really get into basic exercising up until my senior year of high school, which is magically when the bullying stopped happening. I don't even give full contribution to weightlifting for this. Even with my blessed genetic advantage where I apparently turned into a linebacker overnight, I swear, bro, it's like I did one deadlift and my voice dropped a decibel and I gained 2 inches of straight up width. I really do give most of that contributing factor, though, to the confidence that the gym gave me.
All right, so like for the people that are at home going through something similar, so instead of sitting around and just being stuck in your head all day, what % would you say that the gym helped your situation, and what was the drive behind it? Like, was it just the bullying you were going through, or was it something else?
No, there's definitely more to it, but I can tell you now, it helped 100%. There was not one little aspect of it that it didn't help. All I did about my bullying was run to that big brother figure and cry about it happening later. Like, I always just was wondering why bad things happened to me, when really I just had to freaking do something about it. The drive was mostly from the bullying, though, but the rest of it was the realization that I had to do something. The gym really fulfilled that for me. The minute I started standing up a little taller and looking people in the eye a little more often, the more that respect came to me as a man.
Wait. So you do realize you were 6 feet tall in high school, right? That's like taller than the average high schooler.
Well, all right, to be fair, I was just 5'11" for most of that time. So, if you're a female listening, I was basically 5'2", right? I was 1 inch away from that qualification.
Yeah.
But the gym, exercising, getting that confidence of just moving your body, it's a crucial part of development that I just didn't receive at the same time as the other kids did. So it did give me the struggles I had growing up. Once I started balancing my thinking with my doing, I became a better man for it. I truly believe that. The point being, if you're angry all the time, you need the ability to utilize that anger properly. Let it be your motivating force. Let it drive you to success, not harm others or bring others down. Anger is a very intense emotion, and it comes packed full of energy. And at the same time, use that disparity, say in my case, you can use that properly as well. Don't just cry, woe is me, in a corner. Take that energy instead and apply it to making the change in your life that you want to see.
Yeah, so to summarize this entire segment, we want to see men grow and explore their emotions a little bit more deeply, but at the same time, we don't want them to be ashamed for reaching out or to feel bad about fighting the battle of toxic masculinity. Everyone has a different starting point with their emotional strengths and weaknesses. We just need to come together, tolerate these faults, and help pick each other up. There's much to celebrate about being a man. Don't let society tell you otherwise, because there's just as much to celebrate about being a woman. That's a beautiful thing about diversity. We can enjoy our strengths equally and not be expected to have the same exact character profile or traits. And to coincide with this ideology, make sure you listen to next week's episode as we get into the confidence that is fundamental to a man's personal success. We'll also be giving insights to positive male body image.
Good boys!
And these types of like the needs that seem so superficial but still play a big part in our thought processes.
This is Irel Nelson, reporting live from Orlando, Florida, and I'm here to report some insane, stimulating, or shocking news to these homeboys, and hopefully we'll surprise them and catch them off guard. This news story actually happened in West Palm, Florida. Are you ready for the headline?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, dead iguana found in the freezer of Florida pizza shop. That's the headline. This isn't part of their menu. What happened was that they were getting inspected by the state food inspectors, and guess what the inspector found in the freezer? An 80-pound iguana.
80 pounds?
Yes, an 80-pound iguana. Just imagine how much space that actually took in there.
That's a lot of meat.
Yeah, I didn't
Are
like
you
it.
sure
It didn't
on the
say
menu?
if it was a whole iguana or if it was like a cut up pieces of meat. They just said it was in total 80 pounds.
They found 80 pounds of iguana.
Yes.
So it could have been multiple iguanas.
Maybe, I don't know.
They had some iguana in there.
Iguana?
That almost sounds like Wagyu.
They didn't say specifics because they couldn't ask the owner. Like, the owner didn't want to comment anything. They did get to an employee who said that it was a personal gift to the owner, and it was stored separate from the restaurant's food.
Okay.
So it's a gift, but instead of taking it home, they wanted to leave it in their restaurant.
Exactly. But you know how stupid that is? Because you've worked in a restaurant before.
Yeah, it's cross-contamination regardless.
Yes, and I used to yell at my staff for this because you can't put personal food in the restaurant's freezer or coolers.
Correct.
That's like a no-no. First of all, I didn't know people ate iguanas, and I didn't, like, it's considered a delicacy, apparently. I didn't know that.
As a Floridian, I can probably maybe attest to that.
Is it for real? Like, I've never seen that. I just found that out. That's why this is so, like, shocking to me, like, to actually see somebody have iguanas or freeze them. They said on the news article that a company actually does that. They hunt for iguanas or whatever, and they ground it up for meat and burgers and all that.
I mean, I can understand that because gator jerky? People eat jerky. People eat gators.
Yeah, gator is a thing. Gator's really good. I don't know if it's illegal to eat iguanas or not, though. So,
I mean, I know South Florida has a big problem with iguanas.
They do. They did say that in the article.
Yeah.
They said that if you do see the bigger iguanas, you're allowed to kill them.
Yeah,
Because
I've seen
it's a
plenty
problem.
of videos. I've seen plenty of videos where people like go around in their boats in like Miami, and then just with the trees that are hanging over the little water or like the river. I don't know what they're gonna call it, but they'll just pick them out. Just pick them out of the trees.
Because they dig holes into the concrete, even on the sidewalk, because that's where they hide. So the police and the sheriff's department kind of gave the residents a go to, if you see one doing that, make sure you like stop it or kill it or whatever.
Or eat it.
Or eat it. Apparently you can. That I would not. I don't know about you guys, but
I mean, you should eat what you kill, right?
Not all the time. People.
No?
So if you run over a raccoon, would you go pick it up and eat it?
But you didn't run over the raccoon on purpose. You're killing this iguana on purpose.
Yeah, well, okay, when I say killing, I mean hunting, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to go spray raid and then go eat all the cucarachas. No. Okay. Yeah. But, like, if you're hunting, right? So, like, if you went hunting for, like, deer or something, right? I mean, you should probably eat that, right?
Right. That's different, though.
It's like iguana.
But, like, this one, they're not hunting it. They're, like, just... Oh, look at there, in the sidewalk, there's an iguana trying to dig a hole. Yeah. Let me go kill it.
That's because iguanas are the, like, Florida version of armadillos. And armadillos are already kind of like a Florida thing. So you get to levels of Australian when you start talking about iguanas. And, they just go right through concrete like it was dirt. So we decided to eat them, I guess. Well, one family did. That's the first thing I thought, by the way, when you said they had that in their freezer, and then you said that the employee said it was a gift to the family. And I was like, oh, yeah, as soon as they closed that night, they were going to, fire up the grill and eat some iguana.
Yeah, but that's another thing. The article doesn't say how long it's been sitting in the refrigerator. That could have been a gift from Christmas, and they're getting it, like, it's still in the fridge, or the freezer.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't go to specifics, but, like, it was very interesting to me because I didn't know that people ate that.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. Would you try it? I wouldn't try iguana.
No, I wouldn't.
I might have a bite or two. I'm just being honest. I mean.
So, were you shocked at the news? From 1 to 10, how interesting was it?
I'd give it an 8 if you were to call out what that restaurant was.
Oh, it did say what it was, but I don't remember.
Oh, okay. So
but it's in West Palm Beach. I didn't want to remember the name because I didn't want to call people out like that.
Oh, that would have been an extra 2 points, I would have said.
Yeah. I just, on a scale of 1 to 10, I just personally feel more like personally attacked. Being a born and raised Floridian, I saw nothing wrong with this news story, and it was like, damn, bro, they got caught with dinner in their coolers. So, wow. I don't know how to feel about this. I'm on a different level than you guys.
Okay. I guess that makes sense, coming from a boy who used to hunt gators and wrestle with gators.
Yeah, I don't see iguanas being much different. I mean...
They're like baby gators.
But they get to like 5 feet long. They get big.
No, yeah. They're thick.
That's just
big boys. Yeah. I mean, 80 pounds of meat.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's a good haul, man.
Yeah, that's got to be multiple iguanas.
Iguana.
Iguana.
All right, so that about sums it up. I think we did a lot better this episode, don't you think?
Overall? Yeah. Just listening to this audio alone is so much better. And the actual material that we covered, it's been great. I've had a great, real first episode here.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly helped me learn a lot. And then, like we said at the beginning, this is going to be a 3-part series. A lot of stuff that you didn't, if either one of us didn't cover, it will be on the next one.
And this is where we definitely do still appreciate the feedback. We're not saying that hold off until the next episode, really. If there's something that's really going to bother you or something you just want to see us cover, feel free to leave the comment about it. Chances are we're going to be covering it, but if we're not, it would be great for you to mention it so that way we might actually plug a thing or two in for it.
Yeah, and if we get enough from you guys and we don't cover, because it is such a vast topic, we can just make an entire extra episode or like a bonus episode if you guys want.
Right, and that's where we just need that feedback all together to see what's going on here. You know, we'd love to do a Q&A segment, so...
Remember to follow us on social media. Instagram at podcast TMF. That's our Instagram handle at podcast TMF.
Not only are we on Instagram, but as you are obviously listening to us here on YouTube, please make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification button. The notification button is pretty important, otherwise you won't be updated on our video releases, which, by the way, we will be scheduling for 8 a.m. EST every Monday. We are trying to extend our sources for the podcast. That is currently work being done behind the scenes as we look into certain legal things that need to be covered before we can do that. In the meantime, I'm Justin.
And I'm Josue.
And thank you for joining us.